Well, hello and welcome back. This is Dan John. This is podcast number 51 from the danjohnuniversity.com website. Thank you for joining us. We have a question from Sean. I just finished Kettlebell Easy Strength from podcast 39, and the timing sounds about right. Now I want to focus on running an obstacle course training for a 10K obstacle course race in 12 weeks. Do you have any program suggestions? Yeah, I do. First off, so it's 10K. So I would recommend the rule of thumb, well, at least in like the high school level track and field athlete, maybe even the junior college, is that if the race is 10K, that you should do about 30K of easy running. It's sometimes called garbage miles. There's different words for it. And I guess we're not supposed to call it garbage miles anymore, but that would be those easy runs that you would do a few days a week, just getting out and getting the mileage in. Now, that doesn't mean you have to run a 10K every day, but if you ran, about 3 5Ks a week and then just had an extended long Sunday run, it would cover all the grounds. In your other training, you're going to have to start combining upper body work like pull-ups, monkey bars, those kinds of things to supplement what you're doing here. My junior college, Skyline, was one of the first to have this thing called PAR courses, and I always enjoyed the fact that at Juan Diego Catholic High School over here in Draper, they have a PAR course. Now, they're never used. Burlingame High School has one in California. They're all over the place. Many have been torn down, fallen apart, but now with the COVID virus, they're making a comeback. But I think one of the best things you can do is if you can find a series of schoolyards or parks. So if you were to train with me in my neighborhood, we would have you do an easy jog over to Southwood Park. We'd have you do the monkey bars. We'd have you do a couple pull-ups. There's a few other things we might do. And then you'd be off on a jog to the school that's right over here. And then they have a set of monkey bars. They have a set of this and that. And we just kind of have you do a little circuit, a running obstacle course circuit with a lot of play in it. In the weight room, I'm going to tell you probably something as simple as easy strength. If you go on the university site, Easy Strength for Fat Loss, that program, which is the simplest one I've ever put together, might be perfect for you. You're not going to do it for fat loss, but the idea of doing ab wheel, 3 sets of 3 in the press, 6 pull-ups, you'll need many more than that, but you'll get that in the other training. A deadlift variation, swings, and then out the door for a walk. And that's another thing. Don't ignore the long walks too while you're training for this. But one of the things I want you to start thinking about is doing pull-ups tired, doing monkey bars tired, maybe even medicine ball work if you have one tired, so that you get used to kind of catching your breath, so to speak, and then doing an upper body movement. I hope that helps. It's simple. I don't necessarily have a program for you. If you go to the site, there is the Mountain Climber program. It works out fairly well with your time here. It's going to involve basic mobility, basic strength training, a little bit more hypertrophy work than maybe what you're going to need, and the idea of going for long walks on Saturday and Sunday every week. In your case, it might be long runs with monkey bars and pull-up circuits, however you can make it work. Again, I don't know where you live, but I like what you're saying here. We have a question from Gabriel. Now, this is a tough one. Gabriel's 23. He's 6 foot, 170, with no mobility. Even when he was as young as 4 years old, he couldn't squat. He doesn't have very good, he can't do the sit and reach very well, the hamstring stretch. He's been making some progress on flexibility during this quarantine. But his question is this: I would really like to bulk in the next year because I am too skinny to have real pressing strength compared to my back strength, and would like to feel more balanced. Would you recommend trying a program with single leg squats or Bulgarian split squats to deal with my squatting problem? Generally I'm not a huge fan of one-legged work for bulking, but you got to work with what you got. So I think I like where your head's at here, Gabriel. you gotta you gotta do what you gotta do. The cliche of the month club just came by, but if you can't do something, we have to work around it. I would like you to keep following up on this. I used to do the functional movement screen, and something as simple as that might be able to target the specific issues. Now, since it's been since you were age 4, I believe you have written in there, yeah. It might be just, this is who you are. I mean, you might have been put on the earth to be the greatest deadlifter in the history of the world, or who knows what sport you'd be perfect for. That's one lesson I have learned in my career. Everyone pushes, from the 70s and 80s, stretch, 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 stretch. But very often, flexibility doesn't improve athletic performance. In fact, and I got to be careful here because I know the crazies are going to start attacking me, but I actually think it can impair and get in the way of some kinds of athletic performance. Great jumpers and great sprinters often are extremely stiff in certain tests. And I think it'd be silly to make them looser. Yeah, you'll make them look better for your test. It might just destroy their athletic career. Yeah, so Gabrielle, I'm sorry. I support what you're saying 100%. Try it for a while, see how that goes. I would suggest you look into Kinobody, Kinobody, for some insights, as Greg is a big fan of using the Bulgarian split squats in bulking programs. That might be a direction for you to go. All right, thank you. We have a question from Mike, and I don't know if Mike has listened to my binary workshop, but let's just see what he says here. If you had to pick the squat or deadlift for strength, athleticism, which would you pick if you had to pick just one? So I would like to find the country that limits you to just squatting or deadlifting, because I think in the great American tradition of freedom fighting, I hate binary, Mike. I hate these kind of questions, these either or questions. But I understand why people ask it. From my experience, Mike, I think you need the squat for the mobility work, but I really changed my vision on whether or not you really needed heavy squats to be a better athlete. I did when I was younger, but I can go through my journals for you and find there is no connection between high numbers in the squat and big performances in throws. So, but I do believe in a big deadlift. It's, I guess big deadlift. You win. I went binary. I don't like those kind of questions because both have value. And one of the problems of especially being an American right now, is many of us are able to look on both sides of a question. We don't make the news very often, but so I like to say, I would generally say both have their value, and I think you'd be crazy just to have to toss one out because of an internet discussion. Thank you, Mike. We have a question from Eric. Eric, welcome. I did Mass Made Simple a while back, and it worked as advertised. Who would have thought? You actually followed the program and it worked. My question, is there any modifications for women that want to do the program? And if so, what are they? The only issue with women would be on the pressing. Women tend to have odd press numbers, but the 2-3-5s work out very well for women. In fact, I think the original great aha moment I had was working with women on presses using the 2-3-5 numbers versus some of the other traditional templates. No, if a woman wants to bulk up, and decides to do it in a 6-week period, the same rules would apply. Haven't had a lot of women do it. I would say, I know, there's this little thing on my Instagram, and I discovered that my following is 80% male and 20% female. But I would probably imagine that people who have finished Mass Made Simple, you probably would have a handful or a dozen females, and the bulk are male. So I would not in this particular thing, not in 6 weeks. There might be some issues though with the equipment that you use. Make sure that you have an appropriate bench set up For females, very often benches are too high for the female lower leg, the shank, we used to call it. And you either have to put stuff to raise so that the feet can sit on it, or just get a shorter bench. And sometimes squat racks don't have appropriate places for the female athlete, especially those in about, it seems to me that the 5'1" to about 5'5" region, it's hard to find appropriate squat racks. I don't know what happened, but the manufacturers must have never thought that's the height the women was going to squat. I guess I don't know, but there'd be no modifications in the program. But I would like you to spend extra time looking at the equipment issues to make sure for the next 6 weeks, we're going to have appropriate pin heights and squat material. You might even have to invest in a few extra either kettlebells or dumbbells for the more on press, just so that the jumps are a little bit more logical. But no changes in program. Thank you. We have a question from Armin. What do you recommend for mobility for those of us entering our 50s? I'll tell you straight up. The program I like best, Tim Anderson's Original Strength. If you're on the site, go into downloads and pull up Tim Anderson. Tim generously donated one of his books to our site, which I think is the most important. His Pressing Reset, I think, is the best mobility program I know. It's not just that he's my friend. I mean, it's what's helped me too. When I first met Tim at the CKFMS thing years ago, when he talked about some of his ideas, he had me, and this is right before I had this is when I had a necrotic hip, and I felt better doing the rocks and the nods than all the other nonsense I had done. And that's when I became an absolute believer in his ideas. So for me, Armin, go into the downloads, read what Tim's talking about, go online, look up Original Strength, Tim Anderson, and deep dive there. In some schools, they call it pendiculation. That's the basis of what Tim does. It is based on how a baby learns how to crawl. I have had nothing but good success with this. So that's mine. He has a follow-up question. If you can, for those of us who struggle to stay on a path towards a goal, for me it's cleaning up the diet and weight loss, what can you tell us about staying motivated and on target? Well, as you know, I use those pirate maps. In fact, on the back of my computer, right there is my daily pirate map that I follow every day. For me, Armin, that's the number one thing I do, is I free up my brain space by doing the shark habits. You notice I wear this shirt every time. It's because I have 16 of them. I never think about what to wear. It's morning, so right now I'm drinking coffee, and that's what I drink until I work out. I drink water, obviously, too. And then after I work out, then I eat my first meal, and it's heavy with vegetables and protein. So my shark habits are those binary decisions I make in my life. Am I going to go to the wedding or not? Yes, no. Am I going to do this podcast? Yes, no. Whatever, anything that's a yes, no, I just make an instant decision and then do what I need to do. And then the pirate map is that daily, I make coffee before I go to bed. I wake up to the smell of coffee. I do my 1 moment meditation. I try to take a moment to be grateful every day. It's the stuff I do every day. For me, what we need to do, Armin, is turn everything into a habit. So you asked about this Original Strength. How are you going to make the Original Strength mobility work into a habit? Well, first off, I would write it down and I would put it all over the place. And if you can't get on the ground to do your rocking, your nods, your figure eights, your other things, if you don't have the discipline to do that every day for 365 days or 3 times a week, then we need to talk. For me, I'm not a big believer anymore. I used to be in this thing called motivation. But I have noticed in the past few years, I've gotten away from it more and more, because for me, it's about showing up continually. So success comes from, Coach Mon, little and often over the long haul. But I think what hurts a lot of people, Armin, is that they try to, get 365 days of mobility work into one day. I'm coming out with a new book called Attempts. It'll be out very soon. And the first, 100 pages or so deal specifically with what we're talking about here. And by the way, I'm not against goal setting and motivation. I just find it doesn't always work for people. For me, the system I use, and it's stolen from other people, the shark habits and the pirate maps is just so much easier for me to stay on track, because as many of us are now saying, you are the sum of your habits. You are the sum of your habits. So one of the things I want you to start thinking about, and a little bit less on motivation and the gee whiz, come on, I'll show up to your house in a cheerleader outfit and go. That's great for a few days, but then you'll be bored of and I'll shave my legs for you. But what keeps you going is those daily hits of things, and that begins to accumulate. When it comes to things like cleaning up the diet, I think you start with a menu, and from the menu you have the shopping list based on the menu, and then you go shopping, and when you come home, you cut the vegetables, you deal with the food the way you should. But if you don't have a menu, you don't have a shopping list, doesn't matter. But I think you need to do a serious declutter of your house. You can tell that the quarantine has been tough on us, because I've noticed that our food, we tend to have a lot more creamsicles than we used to in our home. We never had, and we're starting to get a little bit of comfort food. But my job as the big kid is to go into the closet and throw that away, or do what I have to do. I hope that helps, Armin. It's a tough question, because it is so personal and so specific. Okay, so we have an email from Simon. Simon says, what are your thoughts on using grips for lifts that are limited by grip strength? My hands are collapsing across the palms. A doctor told me it was a collapse of the fascia. This has affected my grip on some exercises, and I know I can lift more than my hands allow. Simon, of course, I'm a big fan of straps as appropriate. Now, if you're an Olympic lifter, or you're doing, if you're a power lifter and you're doing deadlifts, that's maybe not going to help you out very much. But yeah, I'm fine with that. When in my career, I remember we never used straps at all in the Olympic lifts. And then when Dick Notmeyer finally had me use the straps for things like snatch grip deadlifts, I was like, this is like stealing. So yeah, and there are a lot of new medicines out and a lot of new therapies out, and maybe let's make sure you keep up on the medical side of this. It's great. I mean, we'll make you stronger in the weight room, but let's make sure you take care of that long term. Okay? Thank you, Simon. Ian writes us, if I want to do extra cardio during Mass Made Simple to maintain leanness, would I reduce the benefits of the mass building? Yes, you would. And that's why in the book, I'm pretty clear about not doing it. It's 6 weeks, man. It's 6 weeks. For 6 weeks, can you just buy into building mass? That's the hardest thing for me to deal with. I'm not ripping on you, Ian. It's just a very common thing now. But, everybody, wants to be, I want to be a Highland Game athlete, but I want six-pack abs and I want to run a marathon with my buddies. Well, that's fine. You can do all the things. You'll be bad in all of them. Just stick with the program 6 weeks, or don't. Do or don't do. There is no try. Thank you, Ian. I hope that was helpful. We got a question from Jay. Both of my parents are in their 70s. Both are very active and work out regularly. There's a word I never get right. But recently, both are starting to lose some muscle mass and some weight. Nothing drastic, but definitely noticeable to them. I'm wondering what you might recommend for hypertrophy for a homebound senior couple. They have some light dumbbells and resistance bands, and of course their own body weight. Is there a specific program, book, set of exercises, or even scheme of reps and sets you might recommend for them to retain and hopefully build lean body mass? Jay, that's a tough one. After 35, you start losing lean body mass, and it seems to accelerate quickly. There is a book by Jan and Terry Todd. It's hard to find now, but Lift Your Way to Youthful Fitness. I like it. But I think what you might want to look into them is the book Younger Next Year. They recommend working out 6 days a week, and I believe 2 are weightlifting. But with them being homebound and stuff, we all know what's going to be, especially in their 70s. If they press, if they do a push, if they do a pull, and they do a squat, and even if they just use machines, which you don't seem to have, those are the best. So if they can goblet squat, if they can do some presses, you're on your way. And it could be something as simple as 3 sets of 10. It would be nice if it was progressive in load too. And let me know. It's funny because when you put so many narrow parameters on a question, you run out of options, and I just feel like I just did. Ed asked a question. Interested in incorporating barbell complexes into my routine. What weight do you guys use when doing the complexes rep range? Well, the best rep range is about 8 or 5 or 3. Nothing else works very well. You'll be surprised if you do complex A and C. If you do them for 8, just the barbell, 45 pounds, Ed, you'll get through with it and be like, ooh, what's this thing right here beating in my chest? What's wrong with my breathing? What's coming off of my forehead? It's a lot harder. I recommend to Highland Gamers, when I get them doing them, do 65 pounds in the beginning, then work your way up to 95. And of course, they don't listen to me. One famously heard 65, but did 165 and got through the first few things. And as I understand it, had a bar flop. The bar fell off of him. He was just so exhausted. Err in the direction of lighter until your conditioning comes up. And try to take your ego and stick it on the shelf when you're doing complexes. The complexes are tough enough by themselves. I hope that was helpful. We have a question from Chris, which I've answered many times on this podcast. For general reading and growing as a human being, which book of yours do you recommend? Growing as a human. Oh, my editor thinks 40 years is with the whistle. Because I go through and I talk about my mentors and where I got to where I am, which, is either really, really good or, really, really bad, depending on how you look at it. But most people say 40 years with the whistle. A lot of people say Intervention, which I think is a very, very good book. It kind of gives you my vision of how I work with people. I have updated a lot of it, and my new book, Attempts, will kind of update the goal setting part. And of course, the new book also had more on easy strength, which I'm a big fan of for a lot of people. But Chris, thank you. When you say my books, very often the first thought I tell people, I want to just say, The Sword and the Stone or something else. But in my books, probably 40 years, because it is such a personal book for me, and you'll get insights into my reading and my life story and how books have shaped me, which is why it's an honor for me to write books now. I hope that was valuable, and if you have any issues getting a hold of it, you let me know and I'll get right back to you, okay? Thanks so much. Well, this was podcast number 51, which is hard to believe. Remember, if you have questions, email us at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. We'll do our best to answer each and every question. And we get a lot of repeats and a lot of the same questions. So if I don't answer your questions, be sure to go to our YouTube site or danjohnuniversity.com and catch up with the other ones. Thanks so much.